The Groth brutes slaughter worlds of those they deem inferior short runts. But we runts helped save your almighty council asses in the Vortex War, didn't we? Harry slurred, his fist pounding the bar. The Mizarian ambassador Keed twitched his spines nervously beneath his cloak. This rusty space station dive bar was frequented by the dregs the galaxy had forgotten, just the type of place a disgraced ex-Navy captain would lurk, Keed imagined. Even hunched on his stool, the human loomed large over Keed's diminutive frame. "Please, Captain Allen, there's no one else we can turn to," Keed pleaded. "The Galactic Council refuses to protect us. Without aid, the Groth will exterminate our so-called lesser species. They've already glassed 3 Mizarian colonies." "Sure, now you want humanity's help." Harry laughed bitterly, draining his whiskey. Where was the mighty council when humans were primitive runts fighting to be recognized? Guess it's not so funny when it's your worlds on the chopping block, huh? Cade swallowed, steeling his nerve. "This isn't about council hypocrisy, Captain. It's about right and wrong. Your species stood for something greater once. Or was that just youthful defiance before you became as apathetic as the rest?" Harry's cybernetic eye flared red as he glared at Keed. The Mizarian had guts, he'd give him that. And damn him, the little bastard was right. Humanity hadn't clawed its way to the galactic stage just to watch other short species get snuffed out. "So if those Groth brutes want a war, I'll give 'em one," Harry growled, rising to his feet. "But I'm going to need one hell of a ship and crew." Keid's spines quivered with relief and grim anticipation. The galaxy's only hope against genocidal giants was a bitter, drunken human. Gods help them all. The whine of the shuttle's engines filled Harry's ears as they descended through the clouds toward the Mizarian capital city. He leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, his mind still reeling from the revelations at the bar. Beside him, Keid fidgeted in his seat, clawed fingers tapping a nervous rhythm. As they stepped onto the landing pad, a cluster of uniformed Mizarians awaited them, spines stiff with unease. General Zev, distinguishable by his crimson cape, stepped forward. "Captain Allen, thank you for coming," Zev said, his voice a tense warble. "I only wish it were under better circumstances." Inside the command center, a vast holographic star map flickered to life. Harry's eyes widened at the angry swathes of red seared across a quarter of Mizarian space, each mark a grim tally of Groth conquest. Zev gestured to the nearest colony, a once vibrant world now shrouded in grey. "Merciless bastards," Harry muttered, "bombarded the planet from orbit till nothing was left, then sent in their armies to enslave any poor souls who survived." "An efficient strategy," Zev said grimly. "We cannot match their numbers or firepower. Each confrontation we lose more ships, more soldiers. It's only a matter of time before—" The general's shoulders slumped, a rare show of defeat. But Harry was already striding forward, his cybernetic eye whirring as he scanned the map. "There!" He jabbed a finger at a trio of glowing lines snaking from the Groth border toward the conquered territories. "Supply lines, they're overstretched, trying to feed their war machine. We hit those hard and fast, bleed 'em dry." "Guerrilla strikes to stall their advance," Keid added, spines quivering with excitement. "Buy us time to train our forces in new tactics. Lead the Groth into a trap of our making." The assembled officers erupted into chatter, some nodding thoughtfully, others gesturing in disbelief. General Zev held up a clawed hand for silence. "A bold plan," he said slowly, "but we have so few ships left. Is it not better to consolidate our strength, mount a last defense of our core worlds?" Keed shook his head vehemently. "With respect, General, a war of attrition is a losing battle. We must adapt, strike where the Groth least expect it." Harry felt a fierce grin tug at his scarred face. Guess the little Mizarian had a rebellious streak to match his own. He met Zev's appraising gaze, unflinching. "Your call, General, but if you want to save your people, you need to stop thinking like the Groth. Time to fight dirty." Tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the hologram. Finally, Zev exhaled slowly. "Very well, I cannot condone this, but nor will I stop any volunteers who wish to join this mission behind enemy lines. May the gods watch over you both. As Harry and Keed strode from the command center, a ragtag band of Mizarians fell into step behind them, faces set with grim determination. The ragtag group began to assemble weapons and gear with a newfound sense of purpose. "Looks like you've got your crew," Cade said, eyeing the assembled soldiers. "All we need now is a ship." Harry cracked his knuckles, already itching for the feel of a plasma rifle in his hands again. "Don't worry about that. I've got just the bird in mind. Groth won't know what hit him." The call went out across the Mizarian resistance network. Anyone crazy enough to join a human on a suicide mission, report to Hangar 7. Harry had expected a handful of desperate rebels, not the dozens of ships that now filled the cavernous space. Mizarian fighters bristled with hastily welded armor and black market weapons. A battered Hoda'al freighter had been converted into a makeshift troop carrier. Even a few Xanic scouts had thrown in their lot, purple hulls still bearing scorch marks from skirmishes with Groth patrols. At the center of the ragtag armada loomed Harry's ship, a decommissioned Terran Navy destroyer he had liberated from the scrapyard. Her hull was scarred and faded, but the name Scrappy gleamed defiantly on her flank, just like her captain. The hangar echoed with a cacophony of languages as the assembled crews made last-minute repairs and argued over docking assignments. Harry caught snippets of insults: runt, primitive, scaleback. As he climbed atop a crate, conversations died away into wary silence. Dozens of eyes, compound, reptilian, human, fixed on him. "I know what you're thinking," Harry called out, his voice gruff. "Why should we follow this crazy Terran? What does he know of our struggle?" He met their gazes unflinchingly. "Truth is, I used to think the same about you, just a bunch of backwater aliens, too weak and divided to matter." Murmurs of indignation rippled through the crowd. Harry held up his hands. "But I was wrong. You're here because you're the only ones with the guts to fight, to stand up and say enough to the Groth and their boot-licking council toadies." Scattered cheers broke out, quickly silenced as Harry continued. "The Groth see us as inferior, runts to be crushed under their heel, but we'll show 'em what us little guys can do when we stick together." He thrust his fist in the air. "We may be underdogs, but underdogs have teeth, and if we bite hard enough, even giants will fall. Who's with me?" A roar of defiance shook the hangar as the newly christened underdog squadron pumped their appendages in the air. As the crews scrambled to their ships, Keed pulled Harry aside, his spines quivering. "Inspiring speech, but command fears you are being reckless, that you will lead us all to our doom." Harry clasped Keed's shoulder. "Reckless is all we've got left, my friend. It's time to show the galaxy what the underdogs can do." The underdog squadron dropped out of warp at the edge of the Zaxxon system, sensors straining for any sign of Groth ships. Their target hung in the void ahead, a sprawling repair yard where Groth warships licked their wounds between campaigns of conquest. "Ugly bastards," Harry muttered, eyeing the angular black hulls. Scrappy had once faced ships like these in battle before the Terran Navy mothballed her and her captain. "Multiple fighter craft approaching," Kide called out from the sensor station, spines bristling. "They've spotted us." "Let 'em come," Harry grinned. "All ships just like we planned. Hit 'em hard and fast." The underdog squadron burst into motion, Mizarian fighters and Xanic scouts racing ahead. The Groth ships swarmed to meet them, plasma cannons spitting fire. But the underdogs wove between the blasts with desperate agility, peppering the enemy with precise strikes. As the Groth fighters scattered in confusion, the Scrappy and the Hoda'al freighter punched through the gap. Railgun rounds and jury-rigged missiles slammed into the repair yard's vital systems, shield generators, sensor arrays, power cores. Secondary explosions rippled across the Groth facility as the underdogs pressed their attack. Crippled ships shuddered in their berths, cranes and scaffolds collapsing in showers of sparks. "Huh? Didn't expect that, did you?" Harry crowed as the squadron looped around for another pass. But his triumphant grin faded as a massive shape emerged from behind the shattered yard. A Groth battle cruiser, its hull bristling with weapons. and it was headed straight for them. "Evasive maneuvers," Harry barked. "We can't take that thing head-on." The underdog ship scattered as the battlecruiser opened fire, its lasers vaporizing an unlucky Xanic scout. Harry wrenched the Scrappy into a desperate corkscrew, the destroyer's aging hull groaning in protest. "There!" Kide jabbed a claw at the navigation display. "An asteroid field." "Crazy idea," Harry nodded. "I like it. All ships follow me." The underdogs plunged into the dense field, the nimbler ships ducking and weaving between tumbling rocks. The battlecruiser surged after them, its bulk smashing through the asteroids with single-minded fury. Harry jinked and juked, hugging the larger asteroids, letting their mass shield the Scrappy from the worst of the Groth fire. The battlecruiser doggedly pursued, its commander determined to crush the impudent rebels. Behind him, Kide manned the defensive turret, his claws dancing over the unfamiliar controls. A well-placed shot struck a looming asteroid, sending a shower of debris careening into the battlecruiser's shields. "Nice shooting," Harry whooped. "Keep it up." The underdog ships wove a dizzying path through the chaotic asteroid field, luring the enraged battlecruiser deeper into the maze of rock and ice. Plasma blasts and molten shards filled the void, the Groth gunners growing increasingly erratic as their quarry danced maddeningly out of reach. With a last bone-jarring twist, the underdogs burst from the far side of the asteroid field, their hulls battered but unbroken. Behind them, the battlecruiser ploughed through the final screen of rocks and found itself alone, its prey vanished into the depths of space. On the bridge of his ship, the Groth commander slammed his fist onto the arm of his command chair, the metal buckling under the force of his rage. The primitive scum had made a fool of him. He would make them pay for this humiliation. He would hunt them to the ends of the galaxy and crush them beneath his heel, like the insignificant runts they were. In the Scrappy's cockpit, Harry checked the sensor scopes one last time before nodding in satisfaction. "We lost 'em. Damn fine flying, everyone." He turned to Kide, a fierce grin on his face. "Not bad for a first outing." Kide flexed his spines, the Mizarian equivalent of a smile. "Indeed. The Groth will think twice before underestimating us again." As the underdog squadron set course for the secret rebel base, a palpable current of excitement and hope hummed through the small fleet. The first blow had been struck. The war was far from over, but the underdogs had drawn first blood and they were just getting started. The underdog squadron struck like vengeful ghosts, materializing from the void to wreak havoc on Groth supply lines before vanishing back into the abyss of space. Harry stood at the tactical display, the acrid tang of cooling plasma still sharp in his nose. Around him, the bridge crew of the Scrappy worked with grim efficiency, patching battle damage and prepping for the next raid. "Another Groth convoy reduced to scrap," Harry said with satisfaction, watching the blips wink out on the screen. "They're going to feel that one." Beside him, Kide's spines rippled in a Mizarian grin. "Indeed, their advance has slowed. We're making them bleed for every parsec." Harry clapped his friend on the shoulder. "Couldn't do it without you, Kide. Your intel's been spot on. Those ugly bastards never see us coming." Dire chime sounded and a haggard Xanic appeared on the comm screen. "Captain, we've got a problem. Sensors picked up a Groth battle group massing at the edge of the system. They're laying a trap." Harry's cybernetic eye whirred as he studied the data. The Groth had learned from their losses and shifted tactics. Now the hunters sought to become the ambushers. "Looks like they're finally taking us seriously," he said grimly. "All right, we'll hit them at the Zoris asteroid belt. Use the rocks for cover and—" Her sudden shudder rocked the ship, alarms blaring. "Report," Harry barked. "Multiple Groth ships attacking from all sides," a Mizarian officer shouted. "They've cut us off from the fleet." On the viewscreen, underdog ships twisted and turned, plasma fire stitching the void. But the Groth closed in like a pack of hungry vargs, their angular ships spitting deadly energy. Harry watched in horror as a Xanic scout erupted into a ball of flame, its pilot's dying scream echoing over the comms, A battered Mizarian fighter spun out of control, vanishing into the hungry maw of a Groth cruiser. Beside him, Kaid worked desperately to coordinate a counterattack, but the squadron was outflanked and outgunned. "We have to pull back," Kaid urged. "We can't win this." Harry slammed his fist on the console, his metal knuckles denting the frame. Every instinct screamed to stand and fight, but he knew Kaid was right. "All ships, emergency jump, get clear and rendezvous at fallback point Delta." The underdog ships disengaged, blinking away into hyperspace one by one. But the Scrappy shuddered under a barrage of plasma fire, its shields flickering. "Captain, we've lost the main drive," the helm officer reported, her voice taut with fear. "We're dead in the void." A Groth destroyer loomed on the viewscreen, its guns swiveling to target the crippled Scrappy. Harry's mind raced, desperately seeking a way out. But it was Kaid who acted, his small ship darting forward to place itself between the Scrappy and the Groth warship. "Keed, no!" Harry shouted. "Get out of there!" "Go, my friend," Keed said, his voice calm over the calm. "I'll hold them off." Harry could only watch as Kaid's ship charged the Groth destroyer, guns blazing in futile defiance. The destroyer's shields absorbed the impacts, its own weapons glowing as they prepared to fire. In a blinding flash, Kaid's ship vanished, consumed by a storm of plasma. The Groth destroyer shuddered, its shields overloaded by the point-blank blast. "Now!" Harry roared. "All power to engines!" The Scrappy lurched forward, its jury-rigged drive coughing to life. The Groth ships clawed for them, but the destroyer lay directly in their path, blocking their fire. With a bone-jarring jolt, the Scrappy leapt into hyperspace, leaving the snarling Groth behind. In the sudden silence of the bridge, Harry slumped in his chair, his head bowed. Keed, his friend, was gone, the price of their survival paid in blood. Around him, the crew looked to their captain, their faces etched with grief and grim determination. They had struck a blow against the Groth, but at a terrible cost. Harry rose to his feet, meeting their eyes one by one. "We'll make it count," he said softly. "For Kaid, for everyone we've lost. The Groth want to fight? We'll give them a reckoning they'll never forget." As the Scrappy limped toward the fallback point, a heavy silence descended on the ship. The underdog squadron had bloodied the Groth, but the war was far from over, and the price of victory grew steeper with each battle. In the aftermath of the vicious ambush, morale among the underdog squadron wavered. The loss of Keed and so many brave comrades weighed heavily on them all. Harry watched his crew go about their duties with a grim mechanical efficiency, their usual banter and camaraderie subdued. In the ship's makeshift medbay, too many beds lay occupied by the injured and dying. The air hung thick with the cloying scent of burnt flesh and antiseptic. A Mizarian medic, her red-stained uniform a match for her drooping spines, approached Harry. "Captain, we've lost 2 more. Zanuck Scout Vix and Gunner Real. Their injuries were too severe." Harry nodded, his jaw tight. "Keep me updated, Doc, and thanks for all you're doing." As the medic moved to the next patient, Harry clenched his fists, the servos in his cybernetic arm whining with the strain. Each death was a knife to the gut, a reminder of the terrible price of their defiance. He found Zev hunched over a console, running simulation after simulation. The once pristine fabric of his uniform hung in tattered folds, stained with sweat and soot. "Tell me some good news, Zev," Harry said quietly. "Tell me their sacrifices bought us something." Zev's spines quivered as he turned to face Harry, his compound eyes dull with exhaustion. "The Groth supply lines are weakening. Their advance has slowed, but—" "But it's not enough," Harry finished grimly. Zev shook his head. "Intelligence reports the Groth are amassing their main battle fleet. Hundreds of ships all headed for the Mizarian homeworld. They mean to end this rebellion once and for all." Harry slammed his fist into the bulkhead, the metal denting under the force of his frustration. "Damn them! We can't let those bastards reach your homeworld." "What can we do?" Zev asked, his voice hollow. "We're outmatched, outgunned. If we face the Groth in open battle, we don't have a choice, Harry growled. We have to try. We have to make Keed's sacrifice mean something. He keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. Assemble in the main hangar. I've got something to say. Minutes later, the battered remnants of the underdog squadron gathered before him. A motley assortment of singed uniforms and bandaged limbs. Harry met their eyes, seeing the flicker of despair, the question in their gazes. What now? I won't lie to you, Harry began, his voice rough. We're hurting. We've lost Yami, far too many good people, friends, family. He paused, letting the weight of their shared grief settle across the room. But we can't let their deaths be in vain. The Groth think they've broken us. They think we'll scatter and hide like the frightened runts they believe us to be. A murmur rippled through the assembled crew, a spark of defiance kindling in their eyes. But they're wrong, Harry continued, his voice rising. We're not beaten, not while we still draw breath, not while we still have something to fight for. He gestured to the view screen, where the image of the Mizarian homeworld hung in space, a fragile blue marble against the void. The Groth are coming. They mean to burn that world to ashes, to snuff out the last light of hope in this God's-forsaken galaxy. Harry stepped forward, his gaze fierce. But we won't let them. We'll show them what the little guys can do when we stand together. A roar of approval rose from the crew, a defiant bellow that shook the deck plates. Zev keyed all of you. You trusted me to lead this mad quest. Now I'm asking you to trust me one more time. Harry brought up a schematic on the screen, a Groth warship rotating in hollow projection. The Groth are gathering their fleet, hundreds of ships all hungry for the kill. We can't beat them head-on, but we don't have to. He zoomed the image in, highlighting the warship's bridge. One ship in the heart of their formation, the flagship. From there, the Groth admiral commands the entire fleet. Zev leaned forward, spines quivering. You want to cut the head off the Varg? Harry nodded grimly. Exactly. We get aboard that ship, take out the admiral, and the rest of the Groth fleet will be thrown into chaos. A boarding action? A Zanuck soldier asked, mandibles clicking nervously. Against a Groth flagship? That's suicide. Maybe, Harry agreed. Probably, but if we don't, the Groth will burn the Mizarian homeworld. Billions will die. There won't be any little guys left to fight. He met their gazes one by one, seeing the fear, the desperate hope. I won't order anyone to do this, but I'm going. For Kaid, for all of us. Who's with me? For a long moment, silence fell across the hangar. Then a single Mizarian stepped forward, his spine straight and proud. For Kaid. Zanuck raised her plasma rifle. For the homeworld. One by one, the underdog squadron pledged themselves to the desperate plan, a ragged chorus of defiance rising against the darkness. As the crew dispersed to make their preparations, Zev fell into step beside Harry. You know the odds of this working are somewhere between not a chance in hell and we're all going to die? Harry finished with a wry grin. Yeah, I know. Then why? Harry clapped a hand on Zev's shoulder. Because someone has to. Because if we don't try, we've already lost, and I'll be damned if I let those Groth bastards win without a fight. Zev nodded slowly, his spines rippling in grim agreement. Then I guess we'd better make it a good one. As the underdog squadron hurtled toward their final confrontation with the Groth, Harry stared out at the stars, his thoughts turning to Kaid and all the brave souls who had fallen in this desperate struggle. I hope you can see this, my friend, he murmured. Wherever you are, we're going to finish what we started for all of us. The Scrappy's engines thrummed with power, carrying the battered ship and its crew toward their destiny. One way or another, the war would end, and the underdogs would be there to see it through, no matter the cost. In the smouldering ruins of the Groth flagship, a new spark of hope kindled in the hearts of the allied races. The sacrifice of the underdog squadron had shattered the aura of Groth invincibility, proving that even the mightiest could fall before the united will of the lesser species. On the ravaged surface of the Mizarian homeworld, a young soldier named Zack stood before a sea of grim faces, his spines quivering with barely contained emotion. Cade had been his mentor, his friend. Now it fell to Zack to carry on his legacy. "The Groth think they have broken us," Zack said, his voice ringing across the assembly. "They believe we will scatter like frightened prey, content to survive in the shadows of their empire." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of anger and despair. Zack raised his clawed hand for silence. "But they are wrong. Captain Harry, Commander Cade, they showed us that we are stronger than we know, that when we stand together, fight for each other, there is nothing we cannot overcome." Scattered cheers rose from the assembled soldiers, a flicker of defiance amidst the grief. Zack met their eyes, seeing the same fire that had burned in Harry's cybernetic gaze. "The underdog squadron may be gone, but their spirit lives on in each of us. We will honor their memory not with words but with action." He gestured to a hollow display, the ghostly shapes of Groth warships hanging in the air. "The enemy is wounded but not defeated. Even now they regroup for another assault, aiming to grind us beneath their heel once and for all." Zack bared his teeth in a fierce grin. "But we will not give them that chance. We will strike first where they least expect it." The display shifted, highlighting key systems along the Groth border. "We've all seen the might of the Groth war machine, but like any beast, it must be fed. These are the arteries that supply their front lines: shipyards, fueling stations, troop transports." Understanding dawned on the faces of the assembled officers. A scarred human commander leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "You mean to bleed them?" Zack nodded grimly. "We cannot match the Groth in open battle, so we will make them overextend, stretch their supply lines to the breaking point." He traced a claw along the map, indicating a series of swift, daring raids. "We will feign weakness, draw them ever deeper into our territory, and when their fleets are dispersed, cut off from support, we will spring our trap." The room erupted into a chorus of approval, spines rippling and fists slamming against tables. Zack let the sound wash over him, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He thought of Harry and Cade, of the trust they had placed in him. He would not let their sacrifice be in vain. "The road ahead will not be easy," Zack said softly as the noise died down. "Many of us will fall, but we will make the Groth pay for every drop of blood, every scrap of territory. We will show them the true strength of the little guys." As the War Council dissolved into a flurry of preparations, Zack stared at the holographic stars, his mind whirling with strategies and contingencies. The Groth would not go quietly, but neither would he. The underdog squadron had lit the spark. Now it fell to Zack and his allies to fan those flames, to forge a new future from the ashes of the old. No matter the cost. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.